There's no job, there is no product, there is no service that doesn't involve technology going forward in the 21st century. So be yourself and find the investors who really get you, especially if you don't come from a technical background, if you're a woman, if you're a minority, or God help you if you're both. You might have to knock on more doors. I certainly did. I had to knock on a lot more doors to finally find those investors who really got it in the beginning.
I'm Cris Beasley, coming to you from Dogpatch by the Bay in San Francisco, California. This is the HackerNoon podcast. Today, the first Black woman to sell her company to a NASDAQ-listed company gives us the real talk about getting through all the stages of a successful company, from startup to growth to exit. She also dispels some myths about being a mom and an entrepreneur. Cheryl has appeared on the Washington Post, New York Times, Black Enterprise, BBC, MSNBC, and CNN. I'm delighted to share with you my conversation with this brilliant and hilarious human.
Sunday Night Blues creeping in every week? It's time to find a job you love. Indeed Prime connects tech talent to software, DevOps, and other knowledge worker roles with leading companies like eBay, Barclays, Vodafone, HomeAway, and more across 90 cities. Whether you're looking or hiring, get the right match for you based on location, skills, and salary. Candidates join totally free and also get access to resume reviews, one-on-ones with technical career coaches, work style assessments, and negotiation tips to seal the deal. Join now at Indeedprime.com/HackerNoon to flip the script on the job search. That's Indeed, PRIME.com/HackerNoon. Cheryl Contee, welcome to HackerNoon.
Thanks for having me, Cris.
I'm so excited to talk to you about Mechanical Bull. I have to tell you that I fell in love with you even a little bit more as I was reading your book because you write about your dad being a Howard professor, and you say, each weekday morning while my father worked at his university office, I went to preschool where I'd set up an office of my own. I recruited my fellow preschoolers in creating and running a tiny workplace. Of course, most of what we did, we had to pretend. No one was going to give us a stapler, for example, so we had to imagine a block as a stapler. My preschool mindset was, we're going to produce.
Completely. Yeah, I was a very, the most dangerous 4-year-old. For sure, you may have ever met. But yeah, sometimes it's in you, right? Sometimes, that entrepreneurial spirit is in you and you don't necessarily have the background, that can really help that flourish. Both of my parents were educators, they weren't business people. And so, and there were very few, people in my family who had their own businesses. Most of them worked in the, for the post office or, in the educational, they work for these big institutions. So, and I think there's a lot of people like that, right? Particularly non-traditional founders. And so I really wrote this book for you, if that describes you, you're an immigrant, right? Or, you come from, a family that has served in other ways. This book gives you a head start. And it's just all the things that I had to quickly learn in order to be successful.
Absolutely. I think about this book as being the book for the other 70% of us, because only 30% of the American population is white men. Although if you look at, the headshots on most VC, team pages, you're going to see about 98% white men, but actually it's only 32%. So this is the book for the other 68% of us that also want to be entrepreneurs. What kind of obstacles have you found for us other 68%?
Well, and, just to give credit to the 32%, look, I've had a lot of help from white male mentors. Many, but not all of our investors were white men. I think that this book, if you're a white guy and you're listening to this, this is a great book to read yourself, sure, depending on the background you come from, but also to hand to someone, right? If you're looking for a really practical way to help someone who looks up to you, or, maybe is coming from a different background from you, this is a gift that you can give them of just, a head start. But in terms of obstacles, gosh, sure. As a Black woman, I get it from both sides. So, again, no matter who you are, look, I had probably the toughest journey in, right? So there's something for everybody here, if I made it. But yeah, I would, even though I had been a successful entrepreneur, as we were rolling up this startup, I had some micro celebrity from my blog, Jack and Jill Politics, which was really active during the 2008 and 2012 election cycles, targeted at Black people, politics, and pop culture, but those also who love Black people and are interested in what the hip hop generation had to say. I had started an agency, with my co-founder Roz Lemieux, that had already generated millions of dollars in revenue. Right. So, here I am going to investors saying, look, we've got this new cool thing, it's already got customers. It's, we have an active prototype. It's not vaporware. And, it was like crawling on my belly, Cris, to get, people to even talk to me, and I was at that point, I was kind of used to people, at least taking my phone call, or answering an email. And a lot of doors got slammed in my face. And then even when I would finally, sit down with an investor, I remember sitting down with a potential investor, and this was an angel fund that was dedicated. Like their whole point was trying to fund people like me, right? Who were, non-traditional founders, and sitting across from him after giving him the demo and him saying, well, this is a really great idea. This is, interesting software, but I don't know if you are the one who can really, take this. Oh yeah, girl, people would say it to my face.
Wow.
So, I think it's better now. That was, that was, 7 or 8 years ago. So, things are I think the tide has turned, in part because of the work that people like you and me have done. So Van Jones of CNN, an old friend of mine, I knew him when, but Van and I started, in the wake of Attentively. As part of that, we actually started Yes We Code, which is an organization that's helping over 100,000 low opportunity youth of many colors to find tech careers. So, this is just another piece of that, which, including diversity and inclusion in tech, because look, it's a big country that is diversifying. And if we, set aside the moral imperative here, right, that we want everyone, anyone who's got a bright idea, to have the tools they need to improve people's lives through a great product and service. Let's just set that aside, right? If we are to continue to be one of the strongest economies in the world, it means that, as many people as possible need, to, feel like they have an opportunity to succeed, in the technical arena, because there's no job, there is no product, there is no service that doesn't involve technology going forward in the 21st century. So, hopefully this, gives people some resources and some ideas and some jokes they can use to get through the journey successfully.
Yes. And this is not about, I hope if the white men are still listening, thank you. This is not about, this is not a book for you. My comment easily could have been interpreted as there's nothing here for you. And I couldn't think, I think that's as far from the truth as it could possibly be, because what I find is the case in diversity is that we actually can't afford to not have everybody's voice at the table, because I guarantee you, because I've already read part of the book, that there's stuff in this book that I have never seen in any book about entrepreneurship. And I think the best teachers are the ones that had the hardest time, and they can explain it in such exquisite detail because, you had to learn every single step, every rung on the ladder. You skinned your forehead on it, and you're going to remember, and you're going to tell somebody else how not to skin their forehead. So I do truly think it's a book for everybody. So,
absolutely.
I want to clarify my statement.
Yes, I want to clarify. And also, I think one of the most useful things, I've done a fair amount of public speaking after Attentively, my startup was acquired. And just so folks know, for those who don't know, my startup Attentively is the first tech startup, as far as we know, with a Black female founder on board to be acquired by a NASDAQ company. So absolutely, I feel, more people have been to the moon than have done what I have done, right? Which is something we should change as a society, but it's really reaching a hand down to pull some folks up, anyone. And, I think one of the most important parts of the book, hopefully that is of use to folks, is the description of the startup life cycle. I think a lot of people go in, really focused on the dream, right? Like, I've got a great idea. I want to be my own boss. I want to, be as successful as I can, without understanding that there's a whole arc, right? And you're not going to probably have that business for 20 years. Most businesses have a 5 to 7 or 10 year life cycle before, at a minimum, they have to pivot, right, and reinvent, especially in these times, or, they have to look at, the exit strategy. So hopefully it's useful even from that perspective for anyone of just, what is that like? What is the arc and the life cycle of a startup, and how can I be successful at every stage?
Sunday Night Blues creeping in every week. It's time to find a job you love. Indeed Prime connects tech talent to software DevOps and other knowledge worker roles with leading companies like eBay, Barclays, Vodafone, HomeAway, and more across 90 cities. Whether you're looking or hiring, get the right match for you based on location, skills, and salary. Candidates join totally free and also get access to resume reviews, one-on-ones with technical career coaches, work style assessments, and negotiation tips to seal the deal. Join now at IndeedPrime.com/HackerNoon to flip the script on the job search. That's Indeed, PRIME.com/HackerNoon.
You talk about stuff, like I said, that I haven't seen in any other book before. You write about babies. Your business partner, she was amazing before she had a baby. After her first child was born, her ability soared. Her brain realigned and things clicked into gear. She's full of energy and ideas. There are areas in your brain where you're 5 times faster on your game. You're a different machine. And this is not a message that I've really heard very much.
Right? Isn't that crazy? So that comes from the book, The Female Brain, which is great. It's written by a female neuroscientist. She's actually written another book called The Male Brain, which is fascinating. And I definitely recommend people check that one out too. But The Female Brain, it was a revelation. And I actually had heard that from a number of women who are moms who said, contrary to what you may have heard, I actually feel like I can do more as a mom than I could before. And knowing that, literally, physically, your brain, apparently the female brain shrinks by up to 1/3 during the last trimester, which I totally felt. Okay. Like, I absolutely was so dumb in that last trimester. However, what's happening is your brain is literally remapping. Right. And by the time the baby is 6 months old, it has regrown back, and you're just, I think a lot of women feel like, well, I'm faster because I have to, but no, your engineering, has actually realigned to supersize, your momhood. Apparently men, and people who adopt also have a similar effect. This also happens, but it is like 10%. It is maybe less, pronounced, the impact. But yeah, I think, I do say in the book, look, you do want to try to plan your reproductive activity, just because from experience, I can tell you, having a baby while your startup is rolling is really challenging. But look, for most women in particular, it's pretty likely that during the course of your startup, again, we're talking maybe 5 to 7 years, if you're having, decent success, that at some point, you may have a child. And then, so the book does give some real talk. So there's a story in the book about my business partner, Roz, who had 2 babies during the course of Attentively. So we had this big presentation at Venture Atlanta. So it was at the Atlanta Aquarium, and there were going to be these 2 whales swimming in the conference room. I know, it was pretty crazy.
In the conference room. In
the conference room, yeah. There's like a giant view into one of the tanks. You could see the whales swimming around. So, in front of 600, investors, at Venture Atlanta, investors and other startups, we were going to give a Series A pitch. And she was the pitch woman. She was based in Atlanta, and she was like basically 8 months pregnant, enormous. Okay. Like a lot of baby was happening. And she was going to make this joke, about how, she looked like a whale and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, Roz, I can't. I just, you are doing something so heroic by being the CEO of a tech startup and giving birth that no one has a right to make fun of you, least of all yourself. So she ended up changing the joke around. And I now actually use this joke because I had my baby. Colm was born. That we sold the company in July 2016. Colm was born August 2016. So the joke she ended up saying was, I've got 2 startups. One of them is in my belly, and it's pre-revenue. Don't have an exit strategy yet. And the other is attentively. Let me tell you about that. Right. So I think that, it's there's so many negative messages, and often, I think, there are messages that are there. People don't mean it that way. It's just, there's so many negative messages about motherhood and the impact and, having trade-offs. So there's another story from a great, I think it is from B-Chang Shapiro, talking about her company and how, she's married. She would wear her ring to investor pitches, and she just always got these questions about like, oh, how are you going to balance everything? But the kind of questions that men just don't get.
Never get.
And the ones wearing the ring, that just men can't even imagine that women have to go through, and the same question, right? The same pitch, right? I have this great company. I'm looking for investment. And she didn't even notice that it was an issue until one day by accident, she left her wedding ring at home. And all of a sudden, there were just none of those questions came up in her pitch meeting. She's like, oh, so I just don't want to have to answer these questions. They're not relevant. I'm just going to, I just want to take this off the table. So,
if
I'm not saying
relevant, then men would also be getting them.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Either we're asking men the same question of, hey, how do you plan to balance your family and, all of your home responsibilities and running this intense startup, or we're not asking anybody, right? It's just it's not fair. And there's an implication, right, that you can't, right? I think the negative implication in asking someone to explain that is that, well, you're not going to be able to balance it, are you?
Mm-hmm. Right. Having been in some of these investor pitch meetings myself, I mean, my story was that when I finally broke down and took my male developer with me to pitch meetings, I started getting way more callbacks. And I was so pissed off about it. But I will say, if you're a female founder and you're non-technical like I was and living in Portland, I had like a bunch of strikes against me. But I had a male developer and he was not especially eloquent and didn't want to talk and was really scared to be in the meetings. And so I was like, the best use of his time is to be coding. That was so not true. If you have a developer, especially a male developer, take them with you.
Right. So I do talk about that in the book because it is a decision, right? Like it's a decision of, do I need a dude next to me to be taken seriously? And, Monique Woodard, who's a friend and, an amazing venture capitalist, what she said, her perspective as an investor, from investor's view is, look, be yourself, right? If, take that person, take a guy, if he's a member of the team, in your case, he was an authentic, really important key member and could probably answer some questions, in a way that, was persuasive. And given his technical background, but, what you want ultimately are investors who are investing in you. And that's especially true at the seed stage. At the seed stage, at the beginning of your business, a savvy investor is really investing in you because they know that your business will probably pivot, you'll figure it out. There's going to be some twists and turns along the way. They're investing in someone they believe who is, visionary and adaptable and resourceful, right? Who's going to take their money and do good things with it. And they're prepared to double down, as you continue to grow. So, be yourself, and find the investors who really get you. But, especially if you're, you don't come from a technical background, if you're a woman, if you're a minority, or God help you if you're both, you might have to knock on more doors. I certainly did. I had to knock on a lot more doors, to get, to finally find those investors, who really got it in the beginning.
Yeah.
But it's worth it. It's worth it to have people who really get you and believe in you.
Absolutely. And I have heard some other women investors who, maybe they have a romantic partner who can, invest in their company. And I've heard some of them say, no, I want to do it on my own. I'm like, girl, you take that money.
Early money. Here's the thing. And that's a good question, right? Two things there. One, the friends and family round, right? So there's this, as part of the life cycle, and I talk about this in the book, as part of the startup life cycle, a lot of investors will ask you or will expect that you have done kind of this friends and family round. And, particularly if you come from a poor background or if you're a minority, Black people have 10 cents to every dollar of family wealth of a white person. 10 cents. Okay. So if you're a technologist in particular, right? Or, you have you're a techie, you're already making the most money in your family.
Absolutely.
Okay? People ask you for money. There's no friends and family around.
I sent my mom and my aunt a Christmas card with $100 bills in it because, if I was going to do a friends and family round, I'd be like, Aunt Dee Dee, can you send me $50? She'd be like,
exactly. I would raise a total of $400 doing that. Exactly. So, I think that, I think it's really key, particularly for investors to understand that, a promising startup is going to need a little bit more initial support. But then back to your point about, should you, ask your partner, or your friends and family? Absolutely. Early money in, investors like to give money when other people have given money. So if you have some folks in your network, even very close to you, maybe sleeping next to you, who can show, I'm an investor, I believe in this product and in this person, and I'm willing to put money behind that, that's only going to help.
And what does the opposite say? Your boyfriend is an investor and he doesn't invest in your company is like, what is that?
It doesn't express confidence. So take whatever money you can get, but treat it. So my brother actually, eventually became, provided a small investment. And I actually begged him not, I was like, do you really, I'm glad, but I don't want to, and he was like, no, in his case, it really was, he was coming from the spirit of I want to be a part of this, right? I'm learning a lot just from hearing you talk about this. But also, I want to support you. I believe in this. This mission-driven company that you have that's helping nonprofits with social listening, influencer engagement, marketing automation. No one else is really doing that, in the way that you guys are doing it. I'm here, and I'm going to show that with some actual resources. And I'm really pleased, to say that, he got his money back and more.
Yeah. And after my company failed, there was one of my dear friends who had wanted to put in $25,000 but didn't meet the accredited investor things, which is a really high bar. And he said, gosh, I wish I had invested in your company. I was like, my company failed and you would have gotten none of that money. Are you telling me you wish you had given me $25,000? I literally thought he was having a brain hemorrhage or something. I'm like, do you remember that my company failed and you would have lost all of that? He's like, no, I wanted to invest in you. And it just blew me away that he didn't care. And I do think that that's maybe a good conversation to have with friends and family because, it can burn relationships. And I think that's a big concern for people. They need to understand that they are investing in you and they are very possibly never, ever going to see that money again.
Right. And that they shouldn't provide money that they're not very okay with never seeing again, because 90% of American businesses fail in the first year. And of those, 90% of those that make it through fail by the third year. Mm-hmm. So, but, you're just talking about, the fact that your business failed. I do address that in the book, right? Because I think that this is one of the things that holds back particularly non-traditional founders. You're already working so hard. It's already, your success has already come at such a high cost. And I think the prospect of not, being certain, and not having a certain path forward stops a lot of people, particularly women and minorities, from taking that next step, because they're like, oh, what if I fail? And then like, no one will ever want to hire me. Like the costs of failure seem overly high. And yet what I want to tell people is, failing is not failing with a startup. Okay. Or any business. It's, I used to think that people failed up, and be like, how does that work? But now I understand, even if we were able to get through a successful exit, and boy, exiting is not easy. But even if you fail, which again, most people will, for reasons that often have nothing to do with how well you did or didn't run the company. They're all, it could be competition, it could be environmental conditions that change. Like there's all kinds of reasons why, a business might fail that have nothing to do with how smart you are, how hard you're working. Any company is going to look at your experience and say, here's an executive, right? Here's someone who has executive leadership experience, who understands accounts payable and accounts receivable, who has led, you're now qualified after your business closes for a job, way, higher than kind of where you were before. So, I do want people to understand that, you can then also, because from the company standpoint, you can now be an entrepreneur, right? You can be someone who brings that executive leadership, that vision, that drive, right? Because, that's what that means. If you start your own business, like, you are, an ambitious go-getter. Right? Like you're willing to work hard. Any company is going to see that and say, oh, this is someone who can be an entrepreneur, and a leader within this company and help grow.
Yeah. And I think that it's, for me at least, this is absolutely not the right path for everybody. But for me, I could see that my career was stalling at the employer that I was at the time. And my manager, thank God, he was so clear with me. He was like, nope, I'm not going to make you a manager of this 3-person design team. So I wasn't going to get any managerial skills. He wanted an engineer to manage the designers. God help us all. And eye roll. If you're on video, you've seen it. On the podcast, it was like mega double eye roll. Right
mega double eye roll. My eyes are actually, I may have broken one.
And I can't remember what there was like 3 things that I had come back after a 3-month sabbatical. Like, I want to do this or this or this. And he was very clear that none of those 3 things were going to happen. So I thought about getting an MBA, but I figured for the amount of money that I would spend on an MBA, I could probably start my own company. And that's precisely what I did. And there's no question in my mind that was a better path than an MBA for me.
Yeah, not everybody needs an MBA. For me, it was actually helpful to get one. I actually went to school for it while I was working at a marine conservation organization, nonprofit. So I was one of actually, very few. There were only 2 people working in nonprofits in my class of 50. Which was, now I think the idea of a mission-driven startup is not, or like, a socially, mindful startup is not exotic. But back then, there wasn't even a name, for that. But yeah, my business partner, Roz, didn't have an MBA and never really needed one. So I think it's up to you, For me, I'd say, the 2 things I took from my MBA program that were the most important were negotiating skills, which I was not necessarily so great at, but are really important. And just like real mechanics, for that, but also accounting, just learning like just the nuts and bolts, which I took one of my accounting finals after a root canal. It's pretty high on Percocet. I got a D+, which I think was generous. But you know what? I used accounting, even though I was terrible. Okay, I'm like, accounting is not my strong suit. More of a marketer. I use accounting every week. Okay, maybe even every day. So I think that you can get a lot of the skills in real time. or, you probably already have what you need and can learn it along the way. That's what YouTube is for and books. But, an MBA, it can't hurt, I guess, what I'd say.
Sure. And you point out very rightly that it's not a choice, one or the other. It was a choice for me which thing I did next. And yeah, but some of us are overachievers like you and do both.
Well, I don't know about that, but I have a similar experience. I think for a lot of people, this is particularly women and minorities. I think this is part of, what drives where, I was working in a major, PR company. They had recruited me to run their West Coast, or basically, rehab their West Coast digital practice. And, I was working, literally like 18-hour days. Like it was crazy. And I put together a plan for how I could raise, $1 million in revenue, if I was just given like some more support, a team. Not only did they think that was ridiculous and crazy, I was also denied the promotion that had been essentially promised to me with good performance in my offer letter. So I was just like, it was like a voice from above said, okay, we're done. Like, we've learned as much. I quit that day and was like, peace out. And then went on Twitter and said, hey, as it turns out, I am available. Who wants to work with me? And, the power of a network. And this is, I talk about this in the book too. I would not have been able to start my businesses without relationships, that I've built. And I certainly wouldn't have been able to keep them without relationships. The relationships that you build are so critical to your success, your professional development. And that means being of service to others, so that, there's someone to turn to when you need help. But yeah, so it was the same for me. And so what happened was from that tweet, I got actually a number of incoming ideas and offers, but one of them ended up connecting me to my business partner, Roz Lemieux. And I was ready to business marry her, like by the middle of our first project. And she was like, well, girl, can we just business date for, another, which that is, just so you guys know, like, you can't be an army of one. You have to have, build your team and fill that out, which I think for a lot of particularly women and minorities, like they've already had to work so hard to get to where they are that they really see themselves as kind of an army of one. And it doesn't work that way. But also, now I forgot my point. Lord, what were we talking about?
Well, I will jump in there because I think if you are of an entrepreneurial mindset, one of the characteristics that is true of many entrepreneurs, although maybe not all, is that we have a lot of ideas. And I think one of the most valuable things that you can have as a lens to figure out which of these things I should actually build is who shows up to build them. Because if I've got an idea and nobody wants to help me build that idea, it's maybe not the best one in the stack. I got a lot more. Like, see who shows up, and they can help you kind of sift through which are really the gold. Because collaborators are absolutely essential. And I think business dating, I love that term, business dating is really important. I had a very painful co-founder breakup, and one of my mentors told me to business date him, and I did not. And I live to regret that decision.
Yeah, no, it's true. You definitely want to get a feel for folks because, yeah, it is as intimate and a relationship as marrying someone. Literally, Roz told me in the beginning, she was like, our finances are more tied than me and the boyfriend I'm living with right now. I know things. It's true. I know things about Roz and vice versa that probably our own mothers don't know. Okay. Those people, you've got to be willing to ride or die. So, make sure you feel pretty sure and confident, right? Before you make that commitment and business marry someone and create a company together, because it's rough. Like you are, I named the book Mechanical Bull because, the trick is just, wrapping your legs around and staying on till that Bronco finally bucks you. It is a wild ride. And you want someone who can, again, be part of your posse during that.
Yeah, and they can't be taking more of your energy than they're giving. I know this sounds real obvious, but I remember very clearly a call I had with my executive coach, and she said, I've been meeting with you for about the last 6 months, and I'm looking at my notes here, and I'm noticing that in the last 6 calls that we've had, we've only talked about your co-founder. We haven't talked about all the other things that you undoubtedly need to know, like how to manage people, how to do performance, is everybody pulling their weight? Is there anybody you need to help mentor, all of the stuff. We didn't talk about accounting. We didn't talk about anything. All we talked about in my conversations with her were how to deal with my co-founder more effectively. And that was my moment of truth. It was just a few days later that I started the processes to figure out, call up my lawyer. All right, how do we do this?
It is very real. And, sorting out, and that is an important sign. I think we're talking about something really important is, what are the signs that, this is really a good match? Because what will happen, sometimes, it happens as you gain success and the business starts to change. You may find that, this person has outgrown, or the business has outgrown this person's capabilities, or why they were so essential in the first place. And, it may be clear in how they're showing up too, right? That like their performance is slipping, or, they're showing up at the office later and you're pulling more of the weight. So, I think it is important to pay attention to that. I was just talking the other week with a friend of mine who's a CEO, amazing woman, who just having this really tough, essentially breakup, with one of her co-founders, and I was just like, you got to do it. I mean, you're doing it not just for you and for the company, because the company, if you're successful, it takes on, it's like an organism itself, right? Like, do what's right for the company and for everyone who works there. You're beholden to them. If one person is holding up the show, that hurts everybody, but also do it for your co-founder, right? Like deep down, they know that something is wrong, right? And are asking for more attention because they're not getting the attention that they really need, which is to either like shape up or ship out.
I just can't get over how much I love the practicality of your book. And I don't think I've seen a section that so concretely talks about what it takes to be an entrepreneur. And I will have to say it is not that you have an infinite tolerance for risk. I'm just going to take a second and talk about a billboard that is currently on the 101 South, and I am not going to say the name of the bank that put it up because I don't want them any more name recognition off of this bullshit billboard that they put that said, it's not risk if you have what it takes.
Oh man, that is just a misunderstanding of the process. There's risk at every stage. I mean, during the due diligence, as we were selling the company, I mean, it was like, how in the X-Men, like Wolverine, he has these flashbacks where they're like putting the, the adamantine, the stuff into his bones, and he's like screaming and like, it's nightmarish. And that's what due diligences look like. I mean, like, at any moment, even as we were selling our company, there was a chance that they would, the company would, find something that for whatever reason they didn't like or spook them and be like, oh, never mind. I mean, we both had to work really hard to make sure every single thing was, tied down. I mean, there's risk at every stage for sure. So that is insane. However, right, that chapter, which is, one of the first ones in the book is just all about, look, it's the American dream. Right? To become an entrepreneur, to be your own boss, have your own business, create prosperity, create, something that improves people's lives, right? And that moves, the American experience forward. However, look, the reason people are working from home in their pajamas is because they can't afford an office. And because they don't have time to put clothes on. Like if telling you that makes you feel like, oh yes, I definitely want that as my lifestyle. Like entrepreneurship is for you. I mean, if you're successful, it won't be like that always. But in those first, that first year to 18 months, I mean, you are going to be working harder than you could possibly imagine. And look, are you willing to go into debt for this idea? Are you willing to get paid last for this idea? That's really the risk tolerance that you need to figure out, like, and you may not like it, right? You might, but you might be willing, you might feel certain enough, that you can make that gamble. But absolutely, I mean, it's risky, but, where there is more risk, there's also more reward. And, what I feel great about, and I particularly for the women listening, but also the men, what I love about, having my own business is that I really do have more control over my schedule. And, so I'm the CEO now of Do Big Things, which find us at dobigthings.today. And we are a digital agency that provides new narrative and new tech for the new era in which I think we all sense that we're living in now. We work with mostly nonprofits, foundations, companies that have mission-driven campaigns, like public awareness and education. But, as CEO, even though I work very hard, I have some control over my schedule. And I have created that for the rest of our team members. Anyone from our team can work from home at any time, or a co-working space if they prefer. We have an office in Chicago and in DC. But, I've tried to create both for myself, but for our team members, a work style that also, recognizes that you have other roles in your life and that you have to play a balancing act. So, if that's appealing to you, to be able to say, look, today I can start work at 10 and then I have to stop at 3, but then I'll be back on after the kids are asleep at 7, you can do that, right? You can start to set that up for yourself. And if you're successful, you can build some prosperity for yourself and for the team that you end up recruiting. So, it's risky. Okay. Like I think we just already talked about the fact that there's a good chance, you'll burn that thing down at the end. But, there's an awful lot of reward on the, whether you succeed or fail with that specific business ahead.
Absolutely. And I have to throw in a recommendation for 2 things. First, the only book I've ever read about business finances that made a damn bit of sense to me on a level of like, oh, that would actually help me, instead of, oh, that'd be a giant pain in my ass that I think I should do. And that book is called Profit First. And it's a way of setting up your account so that you can look at your bank account and know how much is appropriate for you to be spending so that you still have a profitable company. Because it's one thing to run a company. It's a different thing to run a profitable company.
Well, absolutely. So there are a couple chapters that address that, the whole burn and versus traction thing, because, right. I mean, if you're lucky enough to get seed capital or venture capital, all of a sudden there's this big check in the bank. You're like, what? Now I have $500,000. This is not the time to go to Hawaii. Okay. All expenses paid. This is not the time to buy that, Lamborghini. Or even to buy everybody in the company a new $2,500 laptop, Yeah, this is not right. This is not the time to do that. You really want to be careful because, it's called a runway, right? And, the key is like, do you have enough runway to take off, or do you fall off, into a ditch, right? Like, so, making sure that you are, for a lot of successful companies, Uber, and Lyft that just started, they're not actually that profitable yet, even though they IPO'd. But, ideally, you're working towards profitability, and investors want to see that. They understand that for the first little bit, you're going to be underwater, you're going to be burning, but they want to see traction, and traction can be defined a lot of ways, but one of those ways is profit. Like, are you
actually? It is a very important metric. It means you get to make your own rules, and the easiest way to get money is not to need it.
Exactly. To actually show, do people want this? Is there really a market for this product? And so, if nothing else, what profit can tell you, obviously it's good to just like make money, but besides like making the money, whether you're making a profit tells you, people are interested in this product, right? And are excited about it and are signing back up. Retention is a really important factor of traction. But also, am I running the business in an efficient way? Right? Because, you can be running the business and doing great, but if you're not starting to get, if you don't have a path to profit, or are experiencing profit, it means that ultimately, things are not as tied down or inefficient internally as they could be. And you could be making improvements in how you approach the business.
Absolutely. For me, I needed to have a way to know if I actually had the money to spend. And Profit First gives you some rough breakdown of percentages, like here's your revenue, here's much, you're going to put this away for taxes, you're going to put this much away for your profits. And it's basically reversing the equation, which in most businesses is I have X amount of money coming in minus Y expenses, and whatever is left over is what I'm going to pay myself. And Profit First is I'm going to get paid, I'm going to have a profitable company, and what's left over is my budget for running the company, the operating expenses. So it's sort of a commitment to being profitable.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just being smart about, am I really looking at, all the factors, that are going to keep this business healthy.
Absolutely.
I love it. Profit first, especially important, again, if you don't know much about accounting, right? You didn't study it in school, if you're like me, that kind of book, Profit First, can be so essential, in just making sure, do you have everything lined up? Are you watching the right numbers?
Yes.
And
it doesn't have to be VC funded as well. I mean, there's resources like I have to mention Tara Reid and Apps Without Code, which is all about how can we prototype this as quickly as possible to understand whether we have product market fit, if this is even a thing that we need to bother to build. And I think as a marketer, I suspect you have a lot of tactics up your sleeve about how to do that. Early question of, is this a product that anybody gives a damn about? I'm curious if you can speak to that.
Sure. Well, the most important thing is to tell people, right? So, I think, coming from the Black community myself, there's often these admonitions of, don't tell people your business, don't put your business out in the street, which can be really inhibiting, right? In terms of talking about your idea and your business. And sometimes people are worried, like, oh, if I tell people about my idea, they'll steal it, right? And nothing could be further from the truth. Most people are too busy and or too lazy to steal your idea. So the more people you can talk to about your idea, the more people you can show your pitch deck to, especially in those early days, the more you can basically do that market intelligence gathering and figure out, well, what appeals to people, right? What about this concept, do people really glom onto, and what is just sort of like, meh, the more you talk to people, that's how you can figure out, well, who are my, who could my team and collaborators be? Who could my vendors be? Who could my suppliers be, right? Who are my customers? Maybe it's different from what I imagined, my customers to be, the people who really need this. As I'm talking to people, oh, they've identified this whole other market segment that I hadn't even thought about who want this product. So, there's all kinds of ways you can learn, but first that means having the courage to really, put yourself out there and talk about your idea.
Beautiful. So sort of as we are nearing the end of our hour, it's gone so fast. I'm wondering if you have any resources that you'd like to offer, books or podcasts or even communities where entrepreneurs get together to talk about these things and support each other.
Sure. Well, I'm on the advisory committee of Dent. So it's dentthefuture.com. Really great conference, but also community, of people who have come together to do amazing things, in their businesses, but also in their lives. So definitely recommend that. I think it is called Hello Alice, but a really cool community of, that's right, of women who, that connects founders with the resources that they need, particularly directed at women, but anyone can join. My book, Mechanical Bull, would be a great thing to pick up. There's a cool picture of a bull on the front. It's orange. That's cool. You can also download it on the internet. Those are a few things that come to mind.
Wonderful. And our question that we ask all HackerNoon guests, what's your favorite hack?
Oh, my favorite life hack. Well, I will say, I just saw this life hacker video that's all about things that you can do with your kid lying down. Like ways you can play with your kid without having to move, which, yeah, okay, real talk. As you know, you want to launch a startup. This is what your future might look like for a while. Like I just need to lie down, but I'm also trying to be present for you. So you can take a white shirt and make train tracks on it with a Sharpie. And then, your child, you can just lay on the ground and your child can play. Kids really want to have contact with you, right? They want to interact with you. So they can take their little train or little car and go along the train tracks, a little massage for you. Everyone wins. Everyone wins in the game. Anyway, that's my new life hack. My son is loving it. It's great. It's a great game. We can both play.
You're brilliant.
We both get our needs met.
Yeah. You have been a delight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cris. This has been really fun.
That was Cheryl Contee with Do Big Things. Check out the links to her new book, The Mechanical Bull, How You Can Achieve Startup Success, plus all the resources she mentioned in the show notes. Please don't forget to subscribe to the HackerNoon podcast on iTunes or head on over to YouTube if you want to see our smiling faces. You can also find us at hackernoon.com and podcast.hackernoon.com or on Twitter at, you guessed it, HackerNoon. I'm Cris Beasley. See you next Tuesday.